It is 2:30. Let's go ahead and get started. The December meeting for the Public Pension Oversight Board is now called to order. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Senator Byrd, Senator Carroll, Senator McDaniel, Senator Mills.
Here.
Senator Neal, Senator Nemus,
Present.
Senator Wilson, Representative Bojanowski,
Here.
Representative Fleming, Representative Graham, Representative Petrie, Representative Pratt, Representative Tipton,
Here.
Representative Weber, Mike Harmon, John Hicks, Victor Maddox, Sharon Mattingly, Representative Hale,
Here.
Senator Higdon,
Get some sleep, old boy.
Representative Johnson.
Here. We do have a quorum and are duly constituted to conduct business. First order of business is the approval of previous minutes. Do I hear a motion? I hear a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda. First off, I'll start off. Chairman Higdon, do you have anything, any opening comments you'd like to make?
No, sir. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Glad to be serving. So the next order of business is our legislative proposals. And the first item of business is BR 424. Representative Nemus, if you would introduce yourself and your other presenters, the floor is yours.
Jason Emus, State Representative, Jefferson, Oldham, and Shelby County.
Damon Preston, the Public Advocate.
Erin Surratt, Executive Director of the Office of Benefits, KPPA.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it. I'll start with, just to make sure we're all on the same page, public advocates provide the services to defendants across the Commonwealth. In civil cases, they have some cases as well, but mostly in criminal cases, it is a vital role in the judicial sphere of our government. And so what happens is if someone gets, mostly, there are other situations as well, but if someone gets charged with a crime and they don't have the resources to hire outside counsel, then the public defenders are appointed. They are extremely professional. They do very good work, and they're overworked. There's a number of, every attorney does a great job, but they have tons of cases. But what we're here to talk about today is, I just want to give that background. The public defender system across the country was required to have a lawyer appointed to you if you couldn't afford one in the 60s and the 70s. So in the 70s, the Kentucky put its system together. There were 3 counties that were not included in that because I think they had systems, or they had their own office that predated the state system. That's Ashland or Boyd County, Fayette County, and Jefferson County. Boyd County came online in the late 90s, 1999 or so. Fayette County came online into the state system in 2007, and the last year we passed a bill that would bring Jefferson County into the state system July 1st, 2024. The reasons we did that are efficiency, to improve the system. Obviously, in Jefferson County, the locals they supported the move. So what we're trying to do that impacts pensions is when we bring the employees over, we're trying to treat them as if they were a state employee the entire time. Why are we doing that? Well, because it's a state requirement, state responsibility. And so we are not crediting the tens of millions of dollars that Louisville has put into the system that they shouldn't have put into the system over the last decades. We're not crediting that at all, but I want to put that on the table because it's something that should be in our minds. But what we're doing is we're telling each employee that's worked at the Louisville Public Defender's Office that you come on to the state system, and we're giving you an opportunity to either buy in. So if you're a Tier 1 or Tier 2, your opportunity to buy in to the state pension system, or to come in anew if you think that's better for you, as if you were just a first year employee. So that's effectively what we're doing here. If we'd be happy to ask any questions, or Damon, I don't know if you want to make any particular presentation.
I'll just quickly thank you for the support that you've given the public advocate system through the years. The only thing I would add to this is Louisville has a number of high-performing, high-quality employees, both attorneys and non-attorneys. I believe there are 23 employees there who, because of how long they've worked for the Louisville system, if we backdate their start date to as if they were starting for state government at that time would be Tier 1 or Tier 2 employees. There's about 70 others that have come in since the Tier 3 deadline. So those are the numbers we're talking about. And for this to be a smooth transition, I need to be able to retain those employees. And that's the real point of this bill, is to send a clear message that they will be respected for the work that they've done through the years, that they're a vital part of our system and of the services to the Commonwealth. So I appreciate your support and any improvements that you have for this bill.
And Mr. Chairman, they're not getting something for nothing. If they decide not to buy in, then they're coming in as if they were a first-year employee. If they decide to buy in, then that's when they get treated as if they were here the entire time as a state employee.
Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Representative Nemus, and thank you all for being here today. I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. In the past, these employees have been employees of Louisville and Jefferson County, correct?
They've actually been employees of a corporation.
Of a corporation.
Right.
So I guess what I'm trying to clarify was, were they part of the county employment retirement system previously?
They were not. They had a kind of like a 401.
They had a separate retirement system outside of
That's
any
right.
of the public. That's what I wanted to clarify. They weren't. So they were part of another entity beside the governmental entity.
That's right, and that entity will be defunct as of July 1st.
So they will have the option to buy in their time, or they can start afresh as I guess it would be a Tier 3 employee.
That's right.
In the Kentucky Employment Retirement System. Now these are these all non-hazardous positions? Okay.
On paper they are.
On paper. I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Tipton. Chairman Higdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all. On this, they're going into the state system, and if a state employee wants to buy time, they have to pay the actuarial cost. Is that what they'll be paying if they buy into where they're buy into the system?
That's correct. The cost would be 100% of the actuarial cost to have that service credit in the system. The actuary is working on an estimation of those costs currently. We should have those soon. But yes, the answer is they would be paying that full cost.
And that full cost is fairly expensive.
Typically, yes.
Yeah. The actuarial analysis, have we seen them?
GRS is working on that. We should have it within the end of this week or sometime the beginning of next week.
Okay. That answers my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Higdon. Auditor Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. They're not going to lose their current 401k or 403b or whatever it is they had. Perhaps could they even roll that to purchase time?
So my understanding, and they'll tell you if I'm wrong, my understanding is that's their choice. If they want to roll it into the state, they can do that, or they can keep it and become a Tier 3 employee. But if they want to buy into the system, they're probably going to roll that over.
But they're not forfeiting that at all.
It's not forced on them, no.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Bojanowski.
All right, I think my questions have almost been answered. So they definitely would get no credits for the years they've already worked. So even if they've worked 30 years, say, for the public defender's office, they would start in as zero
No, I don't think
if they
that's
didn't
right.
buy credits.
No, I think it's really, I'm going to ask Aaron can answer that, but then I want Damon to answer that as well. That is, I want to be clear for the employees that are watching this. That is not correct.
Okay.
So what will happen is they're going to retain their start date with Louisville Jefferson County Public Defender's Office will be their membership date in KERS. So they will retain that to determine their tier. And then if they are a Tier 1 or a Tier 2 member, they will have the option to purchase the time that they worked at the Louisville Public Defender's Office if they choose to make that payment into the system to purchase the time. They will be able to do that.
And if they don't, then they would have a long time till they could retire under the pension.
If they choose not to purchase the service credit, then they will be able to use that service, that time worked, towards retirement eligibility, making them count towards when they would be eligible to retire in KERS. But they would only receive a benefit based on the actual service credit that's in the system
That's if they don't buy in.
if they don't buy.
If they don't buy in. May I
and-
ask one
And so,
brief follow-up?
and so nothing is being taken. We're giving them more options. But if they want to continue, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so if you have a person who had a 401k or whatever type system they had through the Louisville Defender's Office, which I'm assuming the employer made a contribution to as well, now that would end, and they have no option but to either roll over their money or to start in the new tier. Do they have an option of not going into the state system?
No, they'll be state employees.
So
they-
it's not an option.
No. I mean, they'll be a tier 3 if they don't buy in. So, I mean, they'll be state employees. So the former employer won't exist anymore, that corporation. So there won't be an option there.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Pratt?
They brought up an interesting question, that is it 403B or 401K? I can tell you if you're not of retirement age and you withdraw that money, there's substantial penalties. Can they roll it over without the substantial penalties? I'm seeing the head shake yes, so that is correct.
So they could roll it over as part of the purchase without the penalty, but they also will have the option of rolling it over to any investment to roll it over to Schwab or an IRA or something like that. They will not be forced to cash out. This is protected pre-tax money that they can do anything they want with it.
Just as long as they don't withdraw it early and spend it, yes.
That's a great point, Representative Pratt, and we are advising them of that as well.
Thank you. Senator Mills?
Just a couple questions of Aaron, probably. Have we ever allowed someone to buy into Tier 1 recently, since we started changing tiers? Has that option been available for a large portion of folks? And then will this increase unfunded liability at all?
For the Tier 1 and the Tier 2 folks, if they are eligible for past employment service purchases, then they are eligible at this time. It already exists in the statutes for Tiers 1 and Tier 2.
But is this the largest group of people that we've availed this to?
That I don't know that for sure, sir. I'm not sure about that. There's about 25, I think, that would fall into that category of the total number of employees that might come into go to work there. And your second question was the unfunded liability. So that's the actuarial cost that GRS is working on, and it would be 100% of the actuarial cost, meaning that full cost should cover the cost of that service credit in the system.
Anything else, Senator Mills? Thank you. Anyone else have a question for? I've got just a couple of real quick questions. Anyone else first? Very good. So, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but is part of the language of the proposed bill that if an individual wants to purchase their time going into the new system and they don't have enough money in their account, that there's a potential for DPA through a budget item allocation to pay for that additional funding? Is that correct? And if so, would you like to talk to that and just explain that, make sure we understand what's going on with that?
Good.
Yes, that's in the proposed bill for now, as well as a clause that if it's not appropriated, then that doesn't apply. But if appropriated funds are available, and it doesn't cover their private account, doesn't cover the full actuarial costs, then DPA would be authorized to make up that difference so that if they have 15 years of service, they can get 15 years of service towards their state employment. And Mr. Chairman, if I could add just one more thing in response to Representative Bojanowski's question. So the benefits for this hypothetical 15-year employee, as Representative Nema said, they would still be a Tier 1 or Tier 2 if their start date reflected that. It would go towards the rule of 87 for Tier 2 and even Tier 3 employees, that even if they're short of 15, if they've only worked 8 years, that 8 years will count towards the rule of 87 for eligibility. So they will get some credit for that. They'll be eligible for retirement sooner. And also in state government, as I'm sure you all know, the amount of annual leave you get each year is greater the more years of service. They're getting credit towards that. So even if they do nothing else, if they've got 15 years of credit, they will get the number of days annually that a 15-year state employee will get. They will not start from scratch there. So there are quite a few benefits built in to recognize their years of experience.
And again, Mr. Chairman, I know this isn't directly related to pensions, but I think it's important for context. What we're trying to do is we're trying to recognize these employees who've done good work. That's a state responsibility for all these years. And one thing we're not doing, which I think perhaps we should, is we're not crediting the tens of millions of dollars that my community has put into this that no other community has had to. We're letting that go beyond that's water under the bridge. But I think that needs to come into our mind when we're talking about this transition.
Very good. Anyone else with any questions? Yes, Chairman Petrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then I apologize, I was a few minutes late, so this may have been asked, but what's the timeline for having...
Chairman, is your microphone on?
Yeah, I think it is. Gotcha. Sorry. What's the timeline for receiving analysis for what the cost will be if, in the worst case scenario, to the pension funds, unfunded liabilities, and so forth and so on? What's the timeline for completion and receipt of that information, and do we have the same type of timeline expectation for what the fiscal impact will be in the immediate budget cycle if all decisions were made in worst case scenario for a cost to the GF?
The actuarial piece, the GRS expects to have that the end of this week or the first part of next week. So that should be available very, very soon.
And our A&R chairman will have that the moment that we have it.
Got it. Thank you. And the fiscal impact side, that'll be on the pensions, but the fiscal impact as far as current budget year, expected that analysis to be finished?
I'm a little confused by current budget year.
Well, current budget year and a current budget cycle coming up. So I'm looking at what the impact to the systems will be if all the decisions are made to the most costly to the unfunded liabilities and so forth and so on, what that impact will be anticipated to be in the systems themselves, as well as what dollars will be necessary in the upcoming budget cycle to facilitate the transition if all of the decisions made by those transitioning were the most costly to the state.
Yeah, I think we've already provided the information from the personnel, the operations, the ongoing. I think the only thing we have not been able to provide is the pension side, and that sounds like it will be coming in the weeks to come. So I think we're up to date with everything, but we obviously look forward to working with your committee to make sure the numbers are right.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Very good. Good discussion, Representative Nemus. Appreciate you bringing this forward. I will make a note that this presentation and any other presentations we have on proposed legislation is for informational purposes only. We do not need to make any votes on the matters, and we will not be making any recommendations. We do appreciate your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now I know what non-lawyers feel like when they go before the Judiciary Committee.
Up next, Chairman Higdon. Come on down. Just warn you, Chairman Higdon, they're already lining up for questions. I don't think it matters. Sir, if you would identify yourself for the record, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a bill for sick days accountability. Currently, there's no reporting for school districts to TRS about the accumulated sick days. The only time TRS knows how many sick days an employee has, or teacher has, or administrator when they retire, they don't know until they retire. So anytime they give us an actuarial analysis of sick days, it's only an estimate. And this bill is purely about transparency and accountability for us to know exactly what that liability is. I filed the same bill last year, passed the Senate, went to the House. We ran out of time. It didn't pass. So this is not something new. It's like like I said, I filed it last year. For years, TRS has reported sick leave program to cost roughly $40 million annually and was paid via the green box dollars, a supplemental appropriation paid directly to TRS. This annual appropriation was paid off over time, and actuarial liability for the sick leave program that was reported to be about $380 million. In recent years, we've found out that that's only part of the cost. $380 million that we were paying for in the green box dollars went to paid for the teachers and administrators that had already retired. Then we realized or discovered that the liability is more like close to $800 million, $538 million for current estimated liability for current teachers. And again, that's only an estimate because there's no way TRS would know what those sick days are until an employee retires. Under this bill, the school districts will be required every year to report sick day accumulation and activity to TRS, and they would have an accurate record of sick days, and that information would also be required to be included in the actuarial analysis each year of TRS. Like I said, it's $538 million is the for current employees, and that again, that's an estimate. I'm lobbying Chairman Petrie and Chairman McDaniel to pay off that $538 million that still exists. They listened and they were very accommodating last time when we paid off the $380 million, and that made a big difference. As our payments continue to increase, our required payments to TRS, they're estimated by 2032 to be in excess of $2 billion a year. So this paying off this early would certainly help with that. And but like I said, I am lobbying for that. That basically is the bill. It's again, transparency and accountability for us to know exactly what that sick day liability is going forward.
And Chairman, I would just sort of reiterate that $2 billion figure you just threw out was simply for TRS, not for the entire retirement system.
No, that's just, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, and that's not all that we'll pay TRS, but that's just for the unfunded liability. It's gone up a little bit. Well, remember in 2016, we started paying off that unfunded liability, and our payment was $500 million a year. And as we go forward, I think, I don't want to make a guess. It's a lot more than that now.
The point being that the trend is up. It's going up every year.
That's true.
Representative Tipton, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You referenced the estimated $538 million that TRS number's given us. Am I correct that number's not included in the unfunded liability? I believe I'm correct in that. I know Bo's back there. I thought he was.
You might.
But I don't believe that's included in what they report as part of the unfunded liability because they don't know until they know.
Well, and you asked me a question I can't answer. But Bo is here. It'd be nice for him.
Bo, would you like to answer that? If you have the answer to that question, come on. And when you come up, if you would go ahead and identify yourself too, please.
We all know Bo knows.
You thought you were going to get up here today.
Good afternoon. Bo Barnes, Deputy Executive Secretary and General Counsel for the Teachers Retirement System. The actuary captures all liabilities, including sick leave liabilities. And that is, they calculate sick leave liabilities really based on, past history, what we've seen, and have trends for that. So we would have captured that portion of sick leave unfunded liability in our evaluations. The 538 that Senator Higdon referenced would do more than cover the unfunded liability. It would sort of pre-fund sick leave going forward. including all cost for sick leave, except for the 20-year later amortization that we do every year on gains and losses, which we will always do in perpetuity. They kind of cancel each other out somewhat because you have gains year and some year and losses in others. And that 538 was based on the 2022 valuation, so the 2023 valuation number would be a little bit different.
And again, he would agree that's an estimate. We don't know for sure, but if this bill was passed, we would know every year what our sick day liability was, and if we pay off the $538 million, we would know going forward if.
Understand?
Mr. Chair, could I have a follow-up question?
Sure.
Senator, do we know, do school districts across the state have a consistent sick leave, amount of sick day policy? And,
No.
and a follow-up to that, are personnel days allowed to be carried over and used as sick days?
You know, it's my understanding that there's not a consistency, and Bo can correct me. Most school districts allow 10 sick days a year. There are districts that allow 15 sick days a year, and there are districts that allow personal days and emergency days to be rolled over into sick days.
So if I may, so we did do a data dive on what the districts are doing, and there's no uniform standard that has to be followed. So they can do different things with their sick leave and personal day policies. We did find that most were pretty consistent. Almost all were doing 10 sick leave days a year for our teachers and 3 personal days. Administrators get a couple more days because they're on a 12-month, work schedule. But almost all, I think there are really just 2 exceptions. For example, for teachers, where they gave a little bit more, and maybe personal days or sick leave days, and they weren't, really outside the mark. They were like a couple of days more, and the same thing with administrators. So although there's not an imposed standard right now statewide, they seem to be pretty consistent in what they're doing, with a couple of exceptions.
Senator Mills?
Bo, you piqued my interest when you said that would kind of pre-fund sick days. Can you explain that again? So this wouldn't be like a second or third year teacher. This 538 wouldn't be pre-funding their career's sick days in estimate, or is it?
This is, so you have, and you've heard this before, you have 2 types of costs, with pensions. You have always the normal cost, what do we put away each year for a teacher's career to make sure when they retire, there's enough there, employer-employee contributions, and very importantly, earning investment income on those contributions over their career, just like a 401k. So when they retire, we have enough put away to pay for their retirement benefit. That's normal cost. And then, pension plans like TRS, we also have another cost, and that's the unfunded liability cost. So that's a second cost. So there's 2 basically funding requests in our budgets as part of the ADEC that represent both the normal cost and the unfunded liability cost for active teachers. The 538 number is more than just that unfunded liability cost. It's also normal cost as well. So that number, and again, that's going to change with the 23 valuation. It's going to be a little higher, I know that. That would pay off both normal costs and unfunded liability costs. So all that's left, and again, just a reminder, every year our actuary does something they call a gains loss. They compare what they expected for the year and what happened, and then there's a gains or loss. It's 4 of the last 9 years we've had gains, 5 of the last 9 have been losses, and they amortize that cost over 20-year periods. So it's and we're always going to do that because we want to make sure we always, when we get to 100% funded, we make those little adjustments along the way to make sure we stay at 100% funded. The other thing very important to remember is sick leave as a benefit. It's going away, okay? For people who became members of TRS on or after July 1st, 2008, they're capped at 300 days of sick leave that they can use for retirement calculation purposes. The district may choose to pay them for more than 300 days at 1/3 of their daily rate, but they can only use up to 300 days towards retirement service credit. And then also very, very significantly with that, really historic legislation, establishing TRS-4 for individuals who become members of TRS on or after January 1st, 2022, sick leave for salary credit, added to their final average salary. That is not an option for those new TRS-4 members. So you will see the cost of sick leave that we've discussed. That will, over the years, it's going to trend downward. And, we are already replacing TRS 1, 2, 3 and members with TRS 4 members. Our actuary tells us in just a few years, 5 or 7 years, about half our active membership will be TRS 4 members as TRS 1, 2, and 3 retire and replaced by TRS 4.
So this 538 would draw a line on sick day costs
Yes.
to the Commonwealth?
Yes, and whatever that number would be based on the 23 valuation.
I'd like to tell Bo all the time, there's nothing normal about normal cost.
Anything else, Senator Mills? Anyone else have a question for Chairman Higdon? Very good. Bo, thanks for coming up and pinch hitting for us there.
Yes, thank you
Senator
very much.
Higdon, any other comments before we move on?
No, thank you. Like I said, I think accountability and transparency are good, and we'll know our costs going forward if we pass this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Look forward to seeing this bill make it to the House and to the floor this year. Next up, Mr. David Eager, would you like to come forward, please? Mr. Eager has a couple of legislative requests that he's brought together and brought forward, and he is going to brief us on those today. And David,
Yeah,
if you would,
sure.
go ahead, do your, you know the drill.
Yeah, I sure do, after 7 years, yes. I'm David Eager. I'm the Executive Director of the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority, and I'm glad to be here today, and thank you for the invitation. I had 4 things I wanted to talk about. They're fairly straightforward and simple. The first is getting approval for reorganization of 2 departments. The second is BR 1154, which permits us to lease office space for our investment staff. I have some little insights on the increase in K-9 has membership in fiscal 2023. I showed information last time. We reversed a trend, and I just had a little more background on that. And finally, a question was raised at the last PPOB as to the board's ability to have contribution rates that exceeded the actuarial determined contribution. So reorgs, it's pretty straightforward. We're asking to rename the Division of Death and Disability to Division of Survivor Benefits. This struck my craw about the second week I was at KRS, and that was, these are survivor benefits. They aren't death benefits necessarily, and minor technicality, but it really struck me that it really ought to be survivor benefits. The staff in that area wholeheartedly said, thumbs up, please do that. The second is to create an Office of Financial Management, which we've not had at all. We hired our first Chief Financial Officer in January 2023, a CFA, I think the only, our CPA rather, the only CPA on staff. We're folding the Division of Accounting. It'd be moved into the office from the Office of Operations, and this includes cash management and investment operations. We're delighted by the person we hired, making positive steps, and we would want to make that person the Executive Director of the Office of Financial Management. Next, we're seeking the ability to lease office space for our Office of Investments, notwithstanding the limitations of 45, 45A, and 56. We have leased space in Louisville through Real Properties for about 20 years. It was disaster recovery space. We had no investment people. It was substandard, but it served the purpose of being a disaster recovery. In 2018, we wanted to set up the Office of Investments in Louisville. We moved to an upgrade, what I describe as an upgraded space, to provide for the investment staff, and they moved in 2018. In 2022, during that terrible freeze around Christmas time, they had a problem with pipes bursting. The building came unsuitable. It didn't damage our area, but the building was closed. And when it reopened, they had to make such changes as having outdoor toilets. It was just not an acceptable place to work. And so we canceled that lease and are now anticipating looking for a space 2,000 to 3,000 square feet to not only facilitate our current staff, but to be able to build a staff. It would look like the cost might be in the area of $22 to $27 a square foot. We are working with Real Properties to lease that space. However, there's no current lease options available to us, and we think we need to have the ability to work alongside but independent of Real Properties. And would anticipate the cost might be up to, but I doubt if it's going to go that high, $80,000 a year. And for control purposes, we're suggesting that the leases be approved by our board. And I'm in discussions with the bill sponsor about a little bit of fine tuning to that, but essentially the control is going to be board approval. So we are requesting this because we've been without office space for 12 months. The process is time consuming. In 2018, it took 18 months, and we'd like to be able to move more quickly. There are properties in Louisville that we would find acceptable. I've been on site to some of them within that price range. And secondly, we want to emulate what a real investment operation is. We've made great strides in recent years. On the comp side, we've been able to, with the help of the legislature, get more competitive in compensation. We had seven CIOs over a period of about 14 years, and we want to create some stability in that group. We haven't lost anybody. We haven't had anybody resign in the last 3 years. They either have anticipated or are benefiting now from the higher salary schedule. I want to keep it that way. And we have places we want to increase and add to staffing, ultimately to be able to manage more assets in-house at greater cost savings. I mean, the fee savings can be significant if we can get more people in-house, manage more money in-house, and the increased facility would allow us to do that. Third, I showed some data. It's the right column there. Percent change in fiscal for members as of June 2023 versus the prior year. It's the first year in I don't know how many years, at least 10, if not a lot more than that, there were increases. So all members were up 3.8%, state employees 2.9%, and the quasis 8.0%. And there are the numbers that go along with that. So there's 1,358 new members versus the prior June 30th, 476 of them are in the quasis. I would have guessed that was the case, that they would be the ones that would be adding the most. They have an incentive to shift employees who are contract employers to become employees. There's a financial incentive that's in legislation. They also have a new employee, they're paying normal cost only, and that normal cost is a little over 8% versus the old days it was about 49%. So there's much less of a penalty for them to bring somebody on from a pension cost standpoint. But those are the numbers. Finally, the question asked at the last meeting by I think a couple of you, does the KRS Board of Trustees have the authority to hold employer contribution rates steady as opposed to lowering them without either statutory change or budgetary language? So what we're seeing now as a result of House Bill 8 and other things is the contribution rate for K non-HAS, and I'm speaking specifically to K non-HAS, contribution rate's going down. And there was some question if the dollars, $900 and some $1,000, could we lock in on that and keep that, even though the contribution rate actually was going down? And that was the question on the table. Our answer is, first of all, the employer contribution has two aspects, normal cost and the actual accrued liability contribution, paying off the unfunded. The board lacks the authority to set normal cost rate at anything other than what is the actual contribution rate determined by the actuary. No, they have no option to do anything. The board also has to set the dollar amount of the unfunded liability, and it says sufficient to amortize the total unfunded actuarial accrued liability of the system over a closed period of 30 years. So sufficient is the word. Our general counsel has looked up the word sufficient in Black's Law Dictionary, and it says enough in order to accomplish that. It doesn't say it's limited to. So our counsel's interpretation is they could ask for more than is sufficient to cover the unfunded liability. The reality is, I think in 60-some years, the boards have never done that. So the practice has been get the number from the actuary and approve that as the cost rate. So using history as a guide, it would say it's unlikely they would do that, but not impossible.
Very good. Do we have any questions from the board? Senator Higdon.
David, talk about the lease. What will that lease look like? Will that be 10 years with extensions or a typical real estate type lease?
That's not been determined. I think the minimum is going to be 5 years. I mean, that's kind of the industry standard. But I think we can look for some guidance from you all if you want to put some stipulations into the bill. But I think the key thing is, and I've talked with you about this, I think getting the board approval. So this is a decision that's made in open meetings and based on information that's available to the public. It's not anything that's to the contrary.
Well, you pretty much answered my question. I think I'd be concerned if with a 20-year lease, our crystal balls don't go out that far sometime on what's going on. So,
Senator, I think in fact, if you ask the leaseor, their preference would probably not to do a long extended because puts them at risk.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? Auditor Harmon?
Yeah, my question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is about the lease as well. I'm assuming it's going to be a little different than the state leases because I know with the state leases now, like at the auditor's office, if we choose to leave, even though we may have a 2 or 3 year lease, we just have to provide 30-day notice and we can leave with no penalty. Is that same provisions going to be in the lease here, or is this going to be a standard commercial type lease?
In my understanding, it would be a standard commercial type lease.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? I just to make sure I can clarify a couple of things. One, the budgeted amount you anticipate for the cost of the lease, is that in your current budget, or is this something that's going to be over and above what you had planned on previously?
It is not in the current budget, but we have a pretty substantial reserve allocated to a line item.
So there wouldn't be any additional budget requests?
Yeah, and I'd remind you, our expenses come out of the trust, not out of the state budget. So we're kind of clear in that sense.
And I'm a little troubled that you've not had this office space for, what'd you say, 11 months, a year, basically?
Yes.
And is that due to just trying to go through the administrative process? Can you talk to that just briefly?
Yes, I think I don't want to lay it all on that, but they will admit they're very understaffed. They don't work with this type of property normally. That's outside of their wheelhouse, and it's not been a acrimonious relationship at all. I mean, it's been very cooperative, and they understand our problem.
I'm not necessarily trying to put them on the spot. I just want to understand what the dynamics are here. And I think my final question is, would this particular legislation, this language, be specific to this effort only, or is this an open-ended future proposal?
This effort only.
Very good. Any other questions? Yes, Representative Bojanowski.
Senator Berg, but thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
There was somebody sitting right there. Sorry.
I just want to make sure I understand on the last page of your presentation when you're talking about the KRS non-hazardous contributions.
Yeah.
You're saying according to the actuarial rates, the contribution is projecting to be going down next year.
Yes.
And you don't have any way to change that because the board has to sort of follow those.
Yeah. Well, what happens is in the first year of the biennial budget, we get the rate for that year from the VAL in that year, and it's in the budget for 2 years.
Okay.
And the second year, the actuary does another valuation, and in recent years, the second valuation is lower than the first, but the first year is locked in for the second.
Okay. And then is there a second component for the unfunded liability, or is it all part of that same?
There are two components, the normal cost and the unfunded
Okay.
liability, but it only has one component.
Okay, so this is my question. If the normal costs are going down, the unfunded liability, is it possible to manipulate that in such a way that that percentage goes up and the cost to the employer stays the same?
I doubt that very much.
That's not possible.
Well, I don't know. I don't know whether our actuary might be on the call. Might be a better person to ask that, but I doubt it very much. But Danny
Hello,
White,
this is yes, this is Danny White.
Representative, Mr. Chairman,
KPA. Hear me?
is it all right if Danny White joins?
Yes, please.
I don't know if I'm making my question clear.
For KPA, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The way I think the question is, the way I understand the question being asked about the changes in the contribution rate,
right.
Both the normal cost and the amortization cost, the part to finance the unfunded liability have decreased over time, and both of them were anticipated. The change in the normal cost is due to there's more and more people earning tier 3 benefits rather than more generous tier 1 and tier 2 benefits. So that is a small component of the overall contribution effort. The larger contribution effort is the amortization cost, and there's been lots of discussions about that and how that's calculated and what are different options for the legislators. The amount we calculate, an actuarial determined amount, that's based on a set of parameters set in statute. But what the legislators, and that is what the amount that the board has adopted and brought forth to the legislators, what the legislators have the option to do, and they have done in the past couple budgets, is they've actually allocated or budgeted higher amounts than was actually brought forth with the purpose of that to provide additional advance funding to decrease the unfunded liability. So that is certainly something that the legislators can do as they dig into the budget process and the budget bill.
Danny, I'm glad you brought that forward because that's exactly the position. There's some talk about keeping the contribution at a level 8. That's the legislator's prerogative to do that.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question. Thank you.
Anything else, Senator Byrd? I apologize again.
And again, we're very appreciative of any additional appropriations, but it comes from the legislature.
All right. Any other questions from the board? Senator Higdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dave, you've confused me. You said that the legislature sets the rate, but in this, I guess this word you gave us about the contribution rates, you said that the board does have the option to set the rate higher. Is that what you're on the contribution rate?
Well, the board sets the rate. The rate that we use this term, it needs to be sufficient to amortize the total liability. That term sufficient is a bit vague, and when you go to, as our counsel did, it doesn't say it's limited to that. But in practice, since 1956, I guess, I don't think it's ever been a case where the board approved a rate above what the actuary recommended.
But you're saying in this, the last couple, that last line says, but the board has the option to set it at a higher amount.
Yeah, never exercise it to my knowledge.
Well, that's, today's a new day, Dave. You get to do something different.
Well, and then you all can rescind 61,565.
Okay.
It takes it off the table.
Well, just curious what you're saying, and you said two different things basically.
Yeah.
In writing, you say one thing, and then you say the legislature sets it.
Yeah, I think that ultimately the legislature's in control.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? Seeing no. Leader Graham.
I just want to make a comment. It's not a question for here. As we are about to end our committee meeting, there's no other agenda on, correct? Am I correct?
Nothing official. I have one more item that I'll discuss.
Okay, well, I'll
but-
let you do the.
No,
item.
that's all right. You go first.
No,
please.
no, go ahead.
You
Go
sure?
ahead.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Eager. I appreciate the presentation. And one more item I wanted to discuss, not actually on the agenda, and it's not something I particularly want to do, but I have no choice in the matter because it's the last meeting of the year for 2023, which also signifies the final meeting, if I'm not wrong, of Auditor Harmon in his tenure as auditor. And you have been here for quite a while. You've been someone I've been able to go to with questions, and you know, we've talked many times. I value not only your expertise, but your friendship. I hate to see you coming off of this board. But that being the case, there's nothing we can do about it. I will just give you the opportunity if you have any comments before we finish the meeting.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly have enjoyed being on this board. I have been here for 8 years, sitting as auditor. And I've only missed 2 meetings in 8 years. One of them, my wife's uncle died. I can't remember what the other one was. And I appreciate each and every individual here. I think the work of this board has been tremendous. I've enjoyed working with the pension boards. I've enjoyed. It's interesting because Representative Graham and now Senator Higdon, but was Representative Higdon, we both came into the House at the exact same time. So it's been an honor to serve with them and each and every member of this particular board, the ones that are here now and the ones that were here in the past. So thank you for the opportunity to serve, and I appreciate it.
And I would just say again, on behalf of board members past and present, we thank you for your service.
Thank you. And Merry Christmas, by the way.
Merry Christmas. Chairman Higdon, do you have any comments?
Well, I'd also, Auditor Harmon, thank him for, he and I have been serving together for quite a long time. And if you do anything in retirement, do brush up and find you a new joke book. Thank you.
Oh, so many openings there. Thank you, Chairman. Leader Graham, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I was just talking to Senator Higdon. There were 11 of us that came in 2020. What was it? 2003. We were sworn in and we were elected. It was 11. It was 6 Republicans and 5 Democrats. They should have told me what was about to happen. But it's ironic. As you all know, I announced that I would not be running for re-election. And so Senator Higdon is going to be the last one of that group that's going to be serving in the General Assembly. And the one thing I can say about the two of them, both the auditor and the senator, was that we became friends even though we were on the opposite side. And we never let a debate destroy our friendship. We would fight on the other side, but after the end of the debate, we were still friends and we would still talk to each other. And I would hope that at some point in time that the General Assembly will come back to that, where we can work together rather than fighting each other, but working together to build upon what the people of the Commonwealth wants us to do, and that's to provide the services and the needs of our people. And we need to put the D and the R behind us most times so that we can work together. But I just want to appeal to the body and to the General Assembly. You know, I represent a lot of state employees, and every place I go, they're talking, the retirees particularly, are talking about the fact of the matter that they have not had a cost of living increase since 2011, which is 12 years. And we've talked about the possibility, we've had both the Kentucky public retirees and the Kentucky government retirees to come in, and they testified about the possibility of that 13th check. And as you may recall, the annual cost of living adjustment that ended in 2011 for these retirees, and they have faced crippling inflation in recent years. It's been 12 years. And the 13th check would provide up an additional one-time payment to each retiree in both KERS and the state police retirement system. The average payment would be about $1,738 for a retired state employee. And if you take those 12 years and you look at what that payment would be today, it would need $2,367 just to keep in pace with inflation. Mr. Chairman, I'm just saying to all of us who are on this committee, but to the General Assembly as a whole, we owe it to these state employees because of the work that they have done to make Kentucky a better place to live, work, and to call it home and to retire. And so as we move into the 2024 session, I would hope at some point that we can at least provide that one payment check to these employees who have served us well and who have taught those who are now serving us currently as to how to be good and excellent, I should say, employees who provide us with all the information that we need and want, and then some. And as I said several weeks ago, our staff here in the General Assembly has been recognized, I don't know how many times, as being one of the best legislative workers in the country. And they were taught to do that by those who came before them. And we think of all of the agencies in state government, how they serve the people of this Commonwealth. We owe it to those retirees who provided their leadership, their knowledge, and their commitment to training these individuals who now serve us. That's all I say. God bless you, God keep you, and may each one of you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you, Leader Graham. And I will echo the sentiment of let's have a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and be ready for what's coming in January of 2024. Is there any other business before the board? Seeing none, we are adjourned.
You all have a good one.
Thank you, sir. You too.
Thank you. Thank you.